Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am Robcasting. And you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, welcome all. This is Robservations, the show about something, episode number 718. My God. Well, you know, I got a rant that I'm going to save, a toy rant, actually, that's kind of off topic from what I want to discuss today, but I want to talk about it anyway, because I think it's important, and I've been thinking about it. So I'm going to bring it up to you. My phone is somehow ringing. It says scam likely. Look at that, scam likely. I get a lot of those. It's like we don't know. Why do you, I know they keep trying. I never answer the phone. So anyway, Barry Diller, who ran both 20th Century Fox and Paramount. He was at Paramount when Star Trek: The Motion Picture was made, and his major domo, Jeffrey Katzenberg, they worked together. But he ran 20th Century Fox, and he ran Paramount. And, of course, now he's married to Diane von Furstenberg, and they are like the first couple of New York City, or at least one of them. They just opened that really cool park that was built out on the water. I mean, it looks really cool. So Barry Diller's been around for a long time. He's a great American, you know. And when I was growing up in the 80s, and I was really following movies, and I was reading the trades, and I was in junior high and high school and dreaming of being in the movie business, he was definitely somebody I'm like, I wish I was on Barry Diller's phone call list. Wouldn't that have been great? So he was somebody that I always was aware of and all that. And, of course, he kind of left the business, but now he's become a philanthropist, and he's got a lot of different projects, and he's a consultant, and he does a lot of things. Definitely somebody I would love to sit down with and share a meal just to pick his brain. Always wanted to do that. But anyway, today, David Gura on NPR had an article that he had with Mr. Diller. And I thought, oh boy, here's my topic for Robservations today. Here is the article. Mr. Barry Diller headed to Hollywood studios. Now he says, quote, "The movie business is dead." Well, in an interview with NPR, Barry Diller, chairman of IAC, called the movie business dead. Here he walks to a session of the Allen and Company's Sun Valley Conference in Idaho on Wednesday. I mean, look at that guy. He's still stylish and badass. I want to be just like him. Barry Diller made his name in the film industry as the chairman and CEO of two Hollywood studios, Paramount Pictures and what was then 20th Century Fox. Now he is declaring the industry dead. The movie business is over, Diller said in an exclusive interview with NPR on the sidelines of the Allen and Company's Sun Valley Conference, a media and technology conference in Idaho. The movie business as before is finished and will never come back. Now, if a man like Barry Diller says this, he's like E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton talks, you'll listen. Yes, that has to do with a substantial decline in ticket sales and the closure of movie theaters during the coronavirus pandemic. But Diller, the chairman and senior executive of IAC, a company that owns internet properties, said it's much more than that. According to Diller, who ran Paramount and Fox several decades ago, streaming has altered the film industry in substantial ways, including the quality of movies now being made. Last year, several media conglomerates, including Disney and Warner Media, decided to debut new releases in movie theaters and on streaming services simultaneously. That was a radical change, and theater chains protested it. There used to be a whole run-up, Diller said, remembering how much time, energy, and money studios invested in distribution and publicity campaigns. The goal, he said, was to generate sustained excitement and enthusiasm for new movies. That's finished, he said. The way companies measure success is also different, according to Diller. I used to be in the movie business where you made something really because you cared about it, he said, noting that popular reception mattered more than anything else. During Diller's tenure at Paramount in the late 70s and 80s, the studio released movies like Saturday Night Fever. But since then, he's been known for his work in television. He helped create the Fox TV network, for example. Now at IAC, he's more closely associated with internet ventures, including The Daily Beast. Diller on how the quality of movies has suffered. Today, streaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and competition among companies for content and customers is fierce. Diller pointed to Prime Video, Amazon's streaming service, as an example of how incentives in the entertainment business have changed. In May, the company announced plans to buy MGM for almost $8.5 billion. Quote, "The system is not necessarily to please anybody," Diller said, suggesting Prime Video's primary purpose is to get more customers to sign up for Amazon Prime. It's to buy more Amazon stuff. That's not a terrible thing, but it just doesn't interest me. During the pandemic, there's been a massive spike in on-demand video. In the first quarter of 2020, Netflix added 15.8 million new subscribers. Since then, its growth rate has slowed, but the company says it ended the year with more than 200 million customers. Diller acknowledged the recent success of streaming services and how indispensable they became during the pandemic, but he was less complimentary of their expensive efforts to create more original content. These streaming services have been making something they call movies, he said. They ain't movies. There's some weird algorithmic process that has created things that last 100 minutes or so. Can I just say, God bless you, Barry Diller. For Diller, this is about a seismic change and nostalgia, but also about semantics. The definition of movie, he said, is in such transition that it doesn't mean anything right now. Companies are trying to figure out what viewers want and how they want it. That has led to hits and misses. Diller dishes on the spectacular failure of Quibi. You all know I love my Quibi. And I feel bad about how... I actually feel kind of guilty about how badly I treated Quibi. But you know what? It was a really, really stupid idea to begin with. And boy, I would love to have had just a small sliver of the money they spent on, well, their investors' money that they spent, because I would have made a movie that would have made money. But that's neither here nor there. Asked about Quibi, the now defunct streaming platform founded by Jeffrey Katzenberg, the former chairman of the Walt Disney Studios, Diller was unequivocal. And this is, by the way, this is Diller talking about his former major domo, or his lapdog, however you want to put it. But Diller was unequivocal. Quibi was just a bad idea, he said. It's that simple. The company raised $1.75 billion, and it spent most of that money commissioning content, short videos designed to be watched on smartphones. In the months that followed its launch last year, Quibi failed to get any traction, and it ended its streaming service in December. Diller goes on, "It was a bad idea that had no testing ground other than big-scale investment," Diller said. "Otherwise, it would have slithered around for a while, but it was such a big-scale thing that it lived and died in a millisecond." In January, Quibi sold its assets, 75 shows and documentaries, to Roku, reportedly for less than $100 million. "It has no relevance on anything," Diller said. "The idea of professional, A-quality, 10 minutes or less stuff made no sense." Katzenberg was a Diller protege, part of a group of people whom Diller mentored known as the Killer Dillers. And he is also in Idaho this week, participating in the Allen and Company conference. Through a spokesperson, Katzenberg declined to comment. Diller said he has almost zero interest in the movie business today. In recent months, he has turned his attention to producing plays on Broadway. "I find that far more creative," he said. So that's what Barry Diller had to say about the motion picture business. Now, as you know, I have a very highly placed source in the entertainment business who I like to ask questions of about business-related issues. This person is extremely successful and he told me something that I actually love. He told me that he was, quote unquote, a first third person, meaning it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about the entire process, but what his primary interest is in is acquiring properties, making deals, getting the people to make them hired, and moving on. What I love about this guy is that he really knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing, and does it. He really does. So I asked this person to weigh in on what Diller was saying, and I got this back. And by the way, kudos to this person. I asked about this 2 hours ago before I went on. They got back to me within an hour with this. Barry is not completely off base with his comments. I think Barry is saying the movie business as we've known it is dead. Perhaps it is just his definition of the movie business, where the consumers had a wide variety of choices in theaters, will no longer exist. But all businesses go through some change eventually. It is true that the movie business is going through a complete transformation with the advent of streamers. With platforms like Netflix and Paramount Plus announcing they will be releasing a movie a week, consumers will be bombarded with new movies where it makes it less likely they will be as excited to go to the theaters to screen the latest studio theatrical release. Don't get me wrong, there will always be a demand for the big blockbusters or horror movies where the communal experience cannot be replicated with in-home viewing. It's just going to be harder for studios to justify making other types of movies for theaters. It is also true that because there will be so many new movies being made and released each year, the overall quality will suffer. There will be many movies that are getting made that maybe should not have been made. And the, quote, arms race for content is making it harder to lock down the talent and the production services for everyone. Quality will suffer. However, that is not to say that everything will suck. There are bound to be some movies that'll be great. It'll just be harder to get the word out when those movies are dumped on the consumers with all the other subpar products. But it's not all doom and gloom. Eventually, the studios and streamers will stop spending 100% plus of their revenue on content. It's simply unsustainable. At some point, there will be 5 major streaming platforms where they will have swallowed all of the former film studios, where they will stop overspending to attract and keep their subscribers. I give it 3 to 5 years when that figure will level off to about 35% of revenue spent on content. At that point, the money will be spent more judiciously and, one would hope, focus more on quality content with the best talent. That's what my friend had to say, and once again, I think his sage-like advice and observations are incredibly valuable. For me, I think the point that he makes, and we're having this problem right now, is the production services and the actual people that are available to make movies they're all working. You know, they're all out there busting their asses, and there's a lot going on. A lot of things are being made, but really, I think ultimately there's who's going to say what the quality of these things is. And, you know, in the era when Barry Diller was running Fox and Paramount, I mean, they had the people that were making films were doing quite a good job. And the talent level was extremely high, and the studio executives really knew what they wanted to make. They were calling the shots. You know, now we have not that we don't need a fusillade of Ivy League educated creative executives out on the front lines firing off their opinions about what should and shouldn't get made. But we're not training people who know story or who know film. You know, movie making is the one business I've seen, and having worked in it now since 1989, it's the one business I've seen where everybody thinks they can do it. Everybody. Everybody thinks they can make a movie. Because why not? We all watch movies. Why couldn't we? We should all be able to make them, right? I mean, look, I like watching zit-popping videos on YouTube, but I wouldn't presume to be Dr. Pimples. You know, I wouldn't step into her shoes. I mean, I probably could do it because God knows I popped enough of my own pimples when I was a teenager, but I wouldn't tell someone else how to do their own goddamn job. But man, everyone will step in and tell you how to make a movie. Everyone. And I think what is a bummer about the age that we live in is less and less people know about storytelling, and we're watching it. We're watching it happen. I mean, that's not to say, like when I see someone like Scott Frank come along and make Queen's Gambit, which is a beautiful adaptation of Walter Tevis's novel, 7-part series. I mean, between Anya Taylor-Joy's incredible performance, the actual filmmaking, the craft, the cinematography, the production design, costumes, all that amazing stuff going on. Amazing stuff there. I mean, that was top drawer entertainment. That's one of the best things I've seen in a long time. I told people I started watching the CBS series Evil, which I'm in the middle of episode 8. Oh, wow. I just saw a woman give birth to some kind of a creature. I'm like, this is awesome. Kudos, by the way, to the production team for getting a renewal 3 episodes into season 2, airing on Paramount Plus. Kudos to you guys. Does that mean that maybe they'll step in and allow Manifest to make its go-away movie? Because, boy, Mr. Jeff Rake, he said he'd come on the show. I'd sure like to talk to him about Manifest. But anyway, that's a digression. But no, look, you know, the thing that will save the movie business is what saved the movie business at the end of the 1960s, when the studio system was making movies that nobody wanted to see. It was not keeping up with the times, and you had the mavericks like people coming in and making, making Easy Rider. How about Dennis Hopper coming in with Captain America, with Peter Fonda, making Easy Rider, and Jack Nicholson, and it's just, it gave way to the 70s, one of the most vibrant periods of filmmaking. What was interesting is you had the French New Wave and Italian neorealism, and as we started watching all those movies, finally the directors caught up, our American directors and American filmmakers caught up, and they all invaded the studio system beginning in the late 60s and all the way throughout the 70s. That's what we need now. Now there's way too many people trying to second guess what movies are made, and they're playing them through, well, let's algorithmically, what should we make? You know what? Storytelling is always the same. It's always the same. And great storytelling means you need great storytellers who really understand what it is that they're doing. Just hiring people because, oh, they look good on a spreadsheet, or, I know this person, or whatever. It's not going to cut it. And as my friend pointed out here, the streamers are spending just an enormous amount of money on making content to fight this arms race. Do we need new movies dropping every week? Is that something to remember? There's a movie dropping every week. Well, wouldn't you rather hear that there's a great movie dropping every week? I think that's where we're at, and that's what we want. And that's the thing we're most looking for as film fans. And I think really that's what we've always wanted. Great stories, well told. Never put your universe or your agenda before your characters and your stories. And same as it ever was. So I want to thank my friend for getting back to me on this. And it was very interesting hearing from Mr. Barry Diller at his conference. So there you go. This letter comes from Video Hunter D. It's funny because I've got my Vampire Hunter D poster right over there. Hey Rob, I noticed something that has me very excited for late 2021. Apparently Ridley Scott is putting out not one, but 2 films back to back this year. The Last Duel is scheduled for October, and The House of Gucci is scheduled for November. These will be the 83-year-old director's 26th and 27th film. I am a big fan of Ridley Scott, and with the passing of Richard Donner, I think it would be great to take a moment to share our appreciation for Ridley's work while he's still with us. We all love Alien and Blade Runner and Gladiator, but is there any of his less-watched films that you particularly enjoy? Oh my God, I'm a huge Ridley Scott fan. I love his first feature, The Duelists. I love Legend. Hell, I love Someone to Watch Over Me. I love Black Rain. I think any movie that Ridley Scott makes, I'll watch. But I have to say, 2 of his recent movies have gone to the top of my Ridley Scott list. First of all, The Martian, specifically the extended version of The Martian. Perhaps maybe, in terms of a fulfilling experience at the movies, The Martian might be his best movie. I know. What about Blade Runner, Rob? I mean, look, I contributed to a book of essays on Blade Runner. By the way, that would be the Cyberpunk Nexus Exploring the Blade Runner Universe, which you can get on Kindle or get a hard copy at Amazon right now. So you could get that book. Yes, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ridley Scott. I love the extended version of The Counselor. The Counselor, that'll separate the wheat from the chaff. Not a movie that people are a big fan of. But, you know, hell, man, I'll even watch lesser Ridley Scott, White Squall and G.I. Jane. What about Thelma and Louise? I mean, come on, man. No, I'm a Ridley Scott fan. I'll watch anything he makes just because of what kind of a shooter he is. How about the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven? Let's not forget that. I mean, Ridley Scott is a powerhouse director, Video Hunter D, and I'll watch anything he makes, if only to see the craft of what he does with his shots. Because man, oh man, what a fantastic director he is. So, by the way, thank you for writing in. Appreciate that. Tom Jr. Jackson, our friend Tom Jr. Jackson, writes in a letter. Hey, Rob, I wanted to write in and give my thoughts on the remarks of Stephen Dorff. All right, my man. In advance, I apologize for any language that may offend. What the fuck are you talking about? Come on. So join me on this little op-ed piece. Shall you? Why, yes, Tom Jr. Jackson, we shall. Now, I've seen Stephen Dorff in the film Backbeat about the rise of the Beatles in Hamburg, Germany, and Dorff did a great job playing Stuart Sutcliffe. But I also saw him in Blade, as a matter of fact. I may be wrong, but for a time, Dorff was trying to get a spin-off standalone film about Deacon Frost made, and he was basically told no. So the studio is not interested in making that film. Yet Dorff felt that saying he was embarrassed for Scarlett and the people who make these films after he was in one himself? When it all boils down to it, the whole thing sounds like a little boy who could not get his movie made, so he's going to take his toys and go home. Don't forget, at some point, Dorff will probably work for someone who has been in a Marvel film or is part of a Marvel film or a television series. What are the odds those people are going to confront him and ask him about his comments? Probably pretty good. If I could be bluntly honest with you, always, but Stephen Dorff sounds like a fucking pretentious asshole who's so full of himself and that he's apparently above all those who are in films or make films like Black Widow. Look, as much as I love my comic book films, I love smaller independent movies such as Muriel's Wedding, Tango Shalom, Shadowlands, and the like. But does that mean I'm above all of that, the other things? No, it doesn't. Lately, I've noticed that people just have these abilities to shit all over something they've either not seen or there's not even been a single piece of film shown, and yet it happens. I may not always like things that other people like, but I do not shit on people for what they like. I don't even shit on people for liking Star Trek Discovery and Picard. I do not make people feel ashamed for what they love, and nor should you ever. And by the way, nor should anybody. I like plenty of shitty movies, and people would call my taste into question, and they would run me off YouTube if they knew about some of the movies I'd like. I mean, hey, I like Discovery and Picard because it's just something, but that's my opinion, and I know you're not a fan of them, but I don't hold you over the fire and force you to like it. Nope, I do not. So the fact that Stephen Dorff thinks that he's going to get the good shit is completely crazy. I'm thinking that he may have screwed himself in his career. So while Mr. Dorff has his opinion about Marvel films, I will not let his comments throw me off from watching the films. Also, just so you know, I was speaking with a fellow Post-Geek Singularity member, Catherine, who reminded me of this little tip that Stephen Dorff's co-star on the third season of the show True Detective was Mahershala Ali, who just happens to be the MCU's new version of Blade. So both she and I guess he's embarrassed for him as well. I mean, how did the guy who was conducting the interview not bring it up, or even thought about it, or even brought up how Dorff wanted his own spin-off film from Blade that I talked about earlier in the letter? Because those people didn't know that. I will tell you why, because the interviewer thought to himself, I'm just going to give him the rope to hang himself. I mean, think about it. Before the interview, had Stephen Dorff popped into your mind? Well, no. Occasionally, however, he does, because he was in Phil Joanno's movie Entropy that I actually think about quite often, because it's basically it's his own life story. Because he sure as hell didn't pop into mine. Which brings me back to the whole reason I believe that he went off on Marvel films. He wanted to get his name out there and make sure people don't forget him. So what does he do? Make a complete and total asshat of himself. Well, Rob, I want to thank you as always for letting me wax rhapsodic upon a subject with you. And I also want to thank the mods for doing the thing they do. So until next time, sir, have a better day. Tom Jr. Jackson. Well, thanks for that, Tom. I appreciate that. What a fine letter you have written, sir. Let's see. Ooh, this comes with a picture. And before I read this letter, I need to get this. Oh wow, I got to get this. Wow, I got to put this picture up before I read this letter. To be honest, so why don't I do that? I'm going to put this picture up. I'm going to put this thing up, and I'm doing this not knowing yet what it's all about. What's it all about, Alfie? Apparently, there it is. Okay, here it comes. You're going to experience this with me. Here is a mural, quite lovely, I might add. I really like this mural. Look at the colors. This comes from Miss Catherine M. McClelland. Hello, Rob and members of the Post-Geek Singularity. It's been a while since I last wrote in. I wanted to contact you and let you know that during the last spring months and most of this summer, I've been working on a mural outside for my backyard. While we had a professional landscaping crew over, we requested they build a slightly curved wall. Our yard was bland, and there wasn't a focal point to draw folks into our space. Our kitchen windows faced directly on the shed side, and we thought it looked ugly. I'm familiar with art, so I thought a mural would be perfect to make our home more interesting and playful. Once the wall was finished, another challenge we had to face: what should I paint? My husband and I both agreed, because we lived in the Sonoran Desert region, we'd zero in on that theme. We ultimately decided on Cosmo Canyon, a fictional place in the Final Fantasy VII video game. We used some fan art as inspiration. The raging fire, according to the lore, is always lit. We plan in the future to buy a fire table and look at the mural from a distance. Your episodes have energized me, been motivation to work on the mural. It's quiet at 5:30 in the morning, and listening to you and others talk fandom has helped get me this task done. Helped me get this task done, and I'm not even dyslexic. Thank you for your content. Others and myself really do appreciate it. Much respect, Catherine. Well, okay. How dope is this? Now that I hear, I did not read this letter before I looked at this. What a cool mural. And I love the tile around it. You know what, Catherine? This is exactly the kind of shit I love the most. Seeing other people's creativity. The late, great John Schnepp loved that too. It didn't matter what people were making, but that is particularly gorgeous. I mean, well done. Kudos to you for doing something like that. I mean, what a neat thing to have done. And I love the idea that you'll put a fire in front of it. It'll be kind of like, you got to keep it like Kennedy's Memorial, lit forever. So whenever you look outside, of course, keep it safe. Living on the edge of the Sonora Desert, you wouldn't want to. I don't know. I guess there's no trees to burn down there. I would imagine maybe cacti. What a great painting. Well done. Beautiful colors too. Now I need to know, like, how long did it take? Did you sketch it out on the wall? I love your inspiration. Did you project it on this fan-made image and you use that as you painted? How did you do it? See, I need to know the process. I want to know what you went through. But God, let's take a gander at that mural again. Look at that. That is amazing. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's get a little closer into the detail here. Let's take a look. Let's Cosmo Canyon. Let's get close up. Yeah, check this out. Look at this. Dude, look at that. Wow, those colors, man, what a great mural. And I wonder, are you going to keep adding to that? Like, are you going to paint more? Like maybe a spaceship arriving through the clouds or something? Like every month you could add to it. But either way, that is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. Nicely done, Catherine. And thanks for writing in. I really appreciate you sharing that with us and the entirety of the Post-Geek Singularity. Love it. Fernando, my friend Fernando Barrero. Hi, R&B. Glad you liked the shirt and Blu-ray you received on Tuesday. However, you forgot to answer the question that I'd written on the letter. You mentioned you'd get to it, but I believe because of your rant about Stephen Dorff, it probably slipped your mind. Oh, I do remember. I forgot I didn't get to it. I sent you a tip yesterday, but you didn't get to it. I didn't? Oh, maybe I missed it. No worries. If you don't mind, perhaps you can answer the question in the letter. It was in reference to your experiences in Tango Shalom and what you learned from it. Perhaps experiences that you did not have in Free Enterprise that you had on your latest film, or the differences in your experiences between films. As always, I enjoy your stories, and I enjoyed the article and your input yesterday on what it took for Lord of the Rings, as well as The Two Towers and Return of the King, to be made. Live long and prosper, Rob, and stay metal. Fernando Barrero. Well, Fernando, I mean, I can't, I want to break out into some ABBA whenever I read your name. I'm sure everybody else. Come on, all of you out there, when you hear the name Fernando that you want to sing an ABBA song. Because we all do, don't we? Isn't that part of it? So, a good question. What did I learn? As a matter of fact, I'm learning things about Tango Shalom even today. Okay. So, here's something I learned. When we made Free Enterprise, we referenced a lot of things. Movies, music, television shows, celebrities, a bunch of real-world people. We wanted to use Star Trek the Motion Picture on a marquee. And whenever you want to do this, your script has to actually, first of all, when you make a movie, you need to get something called errors and E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. Now before I do this, I'm going to get this right because I know what it is. Let's see if I can get it. I'll find a good. Let's find out. Here we go. Now, this comes from Investopedia. Now, this is so. Hang on. Let me just read this. Errors and omissions insurance, E&O, is a type of professional liability insurance that protects companies, their workers, and other professionals against claims of inadequate work or negligent actions. Errors and omissions insurance is a form of liability insurance that protects companies against the full costs of a claim made by a client against a professional who provides advice or a service such as a consultant, financial advisor, insurance agent, or a lawyer. Errors and omissions insurance often covers both court costs and any supplements or settlements up to the amount specified by the insurance contract. This kind of liability insurance is generally required for professional advice giving or service providing businesses. Without E&O insurance, a company can be held liable for up to millions in damages plus the fees associated with the legal team. E&O insurance helps mitigate or eliminate these potential liabilities. For example, a client may sue an advisor or broker after an investment goes sour, even if the risks were well known and within the guidelines established by the client. Even if a court or arbitration panel finds in favor of a broker or an investment advisor, the legal fees can be very high, which is why E&O insurance is important. The benefits E&O insurance gives companies or individuals vary greatly depending on the policy and issuing insurance company. E&O insurance may or may not cover temporary employees, claims stemming from work done before the policy was in force, or claims in various jurisdictions. These policies do not cover criminal prosecution and certain liabilities that may arise in civil court not listed in the policy. E&O insurance is also applicable to businesses outside the financial industry, including nonprofits, general maintenance companies, and contractors and engineering firms. Any other company or professional who provides a service, such as wedding planners and printers, also need E&O insurance. Doctors, dentists, and other medical professionals also take out E&O insurance, called malpractice insurance. Now, why did I read this? Why is this at all pertinent to anything at all? Well, on a movie, you need E&O insurance. Now, one of the reasons that you need E&O insurance is because you want to make sure that all of the content in your film has been vetted, that you've made sure that you're not, well, in the case of, say, Free Enterprise, we had a lot of realistic things that were in the film. We referred to a lot of real things. Like, for instance, say you're making a movie where you are, say, drinking a can of Coke that is They've sponsored your movie. You're allowed to have Coke. You went to them. They've given you Coke to put in your movie. But let's say you're drinking Coke over the scene of your Patrick Bateman in American Psycho killing somebody while you're drinking Coke. Coke might not want that, and they might sue you. They said, "Listen, you were going to use our product, but not in a graphic murder scene," because then, of course, they could say that's just one example. Or, you refer to somebody, you disparagingly refer to a real person, or you have an image. I mean, like, you can say things, but if you use the image of somebody and you don't clear it, like, say you want to use an image of Raquel Welch. Off the top of my head, that was the first thing that popped into mind. Why not? I met her once at CBS when we were working on Star Trek. Unbelievably beautiful, even, well, back then, which was, 8 years ago? But if you use a picture of Raquel Welch in your movie, you can't just use that picture. You have to have it cleared. You have to go to Raquel Welch and you have to ask her, or her people, or her estate, or however it works, can we use this picture of Raquel Welch in our scene? And so you then would have to get a release. And if you didn't, that's why you need E&O insurance in case Raquel Welch came after you, said, "Hey, wait a minute." So the idea is you don't want that to happen. So E&O insurance protects you from all of those things. Now, when you have a script, if you're doing it properly, there are companies that read your script and will identify what you need cleared. Like, what are some of the things that you need? Or they'll watch your finished movie and they'll look at it and go, okay, there's things you didn't get cleared. And you got to go get those things cleared, or you have to take them out of the film because they leave you liable you could get sued. So that's a big part of movie making. So it's just like, you can't just throw anyone's song, or you can't just show any celebrity. Like, if you want to have a poster on the wall of, I don't know, Britney Spears and have it say "Free Britney," you can't do that in your movie without permission from Britney Spears. And she also has to approve the fact that it's a poster with the "Free Britney" on it. Otherwise, she can sue you. So when you deliver your film to a distributor, you have to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. You have to have your E&O insurance, and you have to have everything vetted. Because when a distributor takes on your movie, they need to make sure that everything is free and clear so they don't get sued when they distribute it. So one of the things I learned about, even on a low-budget independent film, I came in on Tango Shalom after principal photography was completed, and we're going through this process right now, and there's a few things that were not cleared that I'm discovering now. But not big things. I mean, little things. Because when you're making an independent movie, sometimes you forget. Like, you can't have a character wearing a Nike logo on their T-shirt. You can't do things like that. We didn't do things like that, but you can't do things like that. I know it seems silly. There are certain buildings, like I believe the Flatiron Building in New York is one of them. You can't put the Flatiron Building in a movie, just like you can't put Griffith Park Observatory here in L.A. You can't make your movie and have a shot at Griffith Park Observatory in your movie. It's copywritten architecture, which means if you want Griffith Park in your movie, you have to pay for it. But if you don't, and your movie gets released anyway, Griffith Park can come and say, no contraire, au contraire, mon, whatever, I can't speak French. Just trying to get into the canned spirit, that they can sue you or you just pay them off. But then they can be like, well, if you want the Griffith Park Observatory in your movie, you have to pay. So they can do that. And that's why you have E&O insurance, to help you out in those things. But anyway, so I learned, even in this day and age, I need to step in, even on a low-budget independent movie, and I need to do my due diligence because I just assumed certain things were cleared, and even the littlest things, and they weren't. Most things were, but there was a few things that slipped through the cracks, and I just never thought to bring it up. So one of the things that I will say, I've learned that a lot of the time I've had to play politics when it comes to making movies. I don't like to seem like I'm a know-it-all when I'm working with people, even though I am. But there's certain times when you cannot overstep. Politically, it's not the right thing to do. But I've realized as I work more and more on projects, I probably should, because usually, if I do say so myself, when it comes to making movies or aspects of production, I'm right more often than not, and I should just speak up. But it's minor hiccups, so I realized that I should continue to do that. With Free Enterprise, I hung back a little bit, and I realized I'm not a one-man band here. We're working collectively, and I should have asserted myself more, to be honest. We would have had a better outcome, I think, with the film than we did. But with Tango Shalom, luckily, I'm able to alleviate any pressures that we have. And, we're delivering a low-budget independent movie that was made like it was a studio movie, so we have to make sure all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. Another thing that I'm always reminded of is, boy, I think if I ever get to direct again, I'm going to go back to shooting with prime lenses. Prime lenses. Fixed focal lengths, people. Real intent when you shoot. And even if I use 2 cameras, that's right. Fixed focal lengths. No zooms. It's like no capes. No zooms. I watched a great Roger Deakins video yesterday about shooting. And it was good stuff about how he loves to use primes. Except when he doesn't. So, there you go. Let's see what else is on the docket here. What other letters do we have? Here's a good one. From our friend Victor in Puerto Rico. Victor Rosario for me. Dear Captain of the USS Imagination, the Flying Man. In one of my first letters, I reminisced about how Star Wars may have been released on May 25th, 1977 in the mainland, but in Puerto Rico, we had to wait until October 6th of the same year to see it. Thankfully, I don't think we had to wait more than 2 weeks to see Superman the movie in 78. That would make it a Christmas release, and that's pretty much what I remember. As some of my fellow imagination connoisseurs know, I grew up reading comics, and I still collect them. I'm a Marvel guy, but I like DC comics as well. In fact, I love 3 of their superheroes almost as much as the brainchildren of Jack, Steve, and Stan. They are Hal Jordan, Princess Diana of Paradise Island, and Kal-El. I grew up watching The New Adventures of Superman, the animated show that ran from 1966 to 1970, the one with the iconic narrated intro, "Faster than a speeding bullet," and the still thrilling Smashing Meteors highlight. Like you, I also watched George Reeves' Superman on reruns and appreciated the effort, but not for a minute did I believe that George could fly. What? That's why the ad campaign for Superman the movie hit home. To put it in the proper context, I should point out that the only previous superhero big screen film before Superman was the 1966 Batman flick, and it sucked. Come on, man. Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. Why you gotta harsh my mellow like that? It was the first team-up. Penguin, Joker, Riddler, and Catwoman on a submarine? How can you besmirch the memory of that movie, sir? Anyway, there you go. I was only 4 years old, but I remember the disappointment with Julie Newmar's absence, with the rubber shark, and with the experience as a whole. At least my mom bought me the soundtrack, which was on sale right there in the theater. In the late 1970s, San Juan must have had over 30 movie theaters, but Superman made me return to the huge screen of the UA Cinema 150 at the Laguna Gardens Strip Mall in Carolina. I had first seen Star Wars there, and I felt it was the right place for cinematic first impressions, even though I had to take 2 buses to get there. Carolina is part of the San Juan metro area, but it's still a neighboring town. Star Wars changed my life a year before, but this was Superman we were talking about, and nothing was more important than this film. A film that wasn't allowed to suck. I was scared shitless because I knew it very well could. So 16-year-old Victor sat on the edge of his seat praying nonstop that he wouldn't be crushed with disappointment, that the movie would be good. Good meant respect for the material and the verisimilitude we were promised. You'll believe a man can fly. The film started in black and white with the opening of curtains and a boy reading a copy of Action Comics in 1938. When the drawing of the Daily Planet became real, it felt good, but I was still on the fence. Then the now iconic John Williams March started with seemingly endless credits roll, in which each name projected out at the audience, but in the midst of them, a red and yellow S burned into the screen. At that moment, I understood that director Richard Donner also felt that Superman was larger than life, that we were in safe hands. Also, that he wasn't settling for good, that he went for great. I wasn't wrong. I can't remember, but I must have been crying tears of joy when Chris Reeve elevated in red, yellow, and blue to save Lois and the crowd below from the falling helicopter. Not only did we believe Mr. Reeve could fly, we even bought the cool way he did it, with his arms naturally signaling every change of direction. Richard Donner directed the first great superhero film, and almost the second. The line about the power of the press doesn't work as well as General, would you care to step outside? But as a work in progress, the Donner cut is pretty impressive. Years later, I rented The Omen, and it became one of my favorite horror films of all time. Maverick, Lady Hawk, and The Goonies were popcorn flicks, some have aged better than others. Conspiracy Theory and Scrooged are more than just that, and while I'm not a fan of the Lethal Weapon franchise, I did enjoy number 4, mostly thanks to Jet Li. You and John Campea. Mr. Donner filmed Assassins here in San Juan, but I've never seen it. You should check out Assassins. It's pretty good. The Wachowskis wrote it. If I had known back then he was here, I would have tried to shake his hand and say, thank you for Superman. Thanks to your Midnighter show, I just found out that he also filmed Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Wow. Claudia and I have been watching The Twilight Zone in order, but we haven't reached that one yet. He directed 5 episodes of the original Twilight Zone, although that's by far the best. I'm not sure if I've ever seen it. If I had, I should remember that Bill Shatner starred in it. I do remember the John Lithgow remake directed by George Miller. It's the best thing about The Twilight Zone, the movie. I'm going to sneeze. God bless Mr. Donner. Oops. What a great career. We are lucky to have him. Oh, and thank you, Rob, for reading my letters. And stay new wave. Hey, you like Duran Duran and Frankie Goes to Hollywood? I like The Cars, Blondie, and Talking Heads. Hey, I love Talking Heads. Man, I have stopped making sense on Blu-ray. Well, how did I get here? Victor Rosario Fermaint from Bayamon, Puerto Rico, USA. What a great letter, Victor, and thanks for the great, once again, a little goosing of the Richard Donner memories that we've been celebrating on this channel. Very, very cool. Calvin Bowes is here. Our friend Calvin Bowes, who's, of course, father of 6-year-old Braxton Bowes, budding imagination connoisseur and classic Star Trek fan. Dear Rob, the following scene is in the not-too-distant future if cancel culture gets their way. These are 2 Hollywood executives trying to cast a new movie named Sam and Bob. Sam. All right, Bob, let's talk about casting our new movie. Bob. Well, I was thinking about Denzel Washington as the black store owner. Sam. Well, he could play the part because he's black, but there's one problem. What's that? Denzel Washington's not a store owner. The store owner people would run us out of town if we cast him. They would say not enough store owner representation. Well, I guess we have to scratch that. I was thinking Gary Busey as Father Mike. Are you crazy? You want our whole studio canceled? What do you mean? He's not a priest and he's not a Catholic. Oh, wait a minute. I know Father Alonso is wanting to get into acting. We can't use him. Why? You know the whole role of Father Mike is a Jesuit and Father Alonso is a Franciscan. You keep coming up with ideas that'll definitely get us canceled. I miss the old days when we just had to find good actors. What about Nicolas Cage as the astronaut? He's never been an astronaut, but I did make a call to NASA to see who they could send. Well, I did find one actor who you definitely can cast. Who are you thinking of? Tom Cruise. For what part? He can play the part of the white Scientologist actor. What I wrote above is the way I feel cancel culture is going. What do you think? I do not think I'm too far off. Well, look, I agree with you. But here's the thing. I'm of two minds about this because, you know, Tom Hanks was not gay when he played Philadelphia. And that movie gave a real human face and to the general population really spoke to people about AIDS in the way that I think not a lot of people really understood. If you lived outside of big cities and didn't understand what the AIDS population had done to the arts communities, for instance. And I think that having Tom Hanks play that role got people into theaters because he was a star. So did Denzel Washington. And I think that back then, would somebody have said, well, Tom Hanks isn't gay. You can't cast him. Well, as that role. Today that would have happened. And he probably would have quit the project and it probably wouldn't have gotten made. Which I understand. But on the other hand, I also understand that when you're talking about trans people or anybody from the LGBTQ community, they haven't had the kind of representation. For instance, can an openly gay man come play a straight heartthrob? I want to live in a world where that can happen. I think an openly gay man as an actor should be able to play anybody he wants. And like Neil Patrick Harris playing in Gone Girl, loving Amazing Amy. I'll tell you something. Did I ever once, when I was watching that movie, think that, why is Neil Patrick Harris playing this role? He's a gay man. And when they start getting it on, and the poor guy gets his throat slit by the Amazing Amy, I love Neil Patrick Harris. And when I look at Neil Patrick Harris, I know intellectually he's a gay man. He's a father. He's married to his partner. They have a family. Does this bother me when he's playing a straight role? No. Why? Because I like Neil Patrick Harris. I think he's a great actor. I've liked him as an actor since Starship Troopers back in the 97? I love Neil Patrick Harris. And it doesn't occur to me when I'm watching him in a film role. He's in the new Matrix movie. Am I going to be saying, oh, well, Lana Wachowski hired him because he's gay? No, I don't think so. I think Lana Wachowski hired him to be in that movie because Lana Wachowski thought, well, that he'd be good for the role. And what we want is we want to live in a world where actors can be actors. And the first thing that people think about when they think about, say, Neil Patrick Harris is not that, oh, he's gay. The first thing you should think about with Neil Patrick Harris is, oh, I love that guy. He's great in any role he plays. Or I love that girl. They're great in any role they play. I mean, that's the world that I think that we want to live in. And we're not quite there yet. So I understand. The thing about cancel culture is we were in a fine evolutionary process. We were doing good as a race. I think we've been, the human race, we've been completely derailed with all this cancel culture, and everybody wants, I want this now, or I'm never going to have it. You know, it's ridiculous. But I think when it comes to actors, we have a long way to go. And on one hand, I understand that somebody gets angry that Scarlett Johansson is going to be playing a trans man in a role. I completely understand that. The problem is there a trans actor that can bring in an audience the way that Scarlett Johansson can? So is it better that that movie didn't get made and that a straight woman like Scarlett Johansson didn't play the role? I mean, are we better off? I think we're not better off. I think we would have been better off if that movie got made, and it might have done the same thing for a trans individual that Philadelphia did to humanize the AIDS crisis amongst gay men. And I firmly believe that, because you should never put your agenda before your characters and your story. And if your characters are great and your story is great and the actors you hire are great actors, nobody cares if they're straight, if they're gay, what the hell they are. All they care about is, did that actor bring that role to life in an indelible way? And so I would say that what we need, as with everything, is we need carefully considered, nuanced discussion about these things. With everybody just screaming and yelling and picking up their pitchforks and running down the hill with flames ready to skewer whomever, the real question is, have you made society better through your actions? Or have you made it, well, regressive? And I think we're living through a very regressive time. And I think people with all of this, while on one hand they're bringing certain things to light that should be brought to light, on the other hand, there's been a lot more damage done that we're going to take years to fix. But I want to thank you for your letter. Here's a letter from Cinema. I love hearing from Cinema. So, hey Rob and the PGS, hope everyone is doing well. With all this recent news surrounding the court systems and technicality-based mishaps regarding otherwise awful individuals being set free from prison, even after so much as an admission of guilt, I decided to look back into my catalog of great courtroom dramas. One of my favorite genres, by the way. Starting with some of the classics like Anatomy of a Murder, coming out in 4K, To Kill a Mockingbird, Witness for the Prosecution, and of course, 12 Angry Men. The genre is much older than people realize. There's no question that the genre has been a big gainer of Oscar love throughout the years, with films like My Beloved The Verdict, A Few Good Men, The Rainmaker, The Accused, Primal Fear, or as I like to call it, Primal Gear, Philadelphia, Murder in the First, and most recently, Trail of the Chicago 7. Oh, pardon me, Trail. You wrote Trail, but it's Trial of the Chicago 7, which I found to be quite enjoyable. There have been some decent ones, like A Time to Kill, Snow Falling on Cedars, The Lincoln Lawyer, and there have also been some fairly goofy ones, if not fun ones, like I Love Runaway Jury, Devil's Knot, and League of Legals. The courtroom drama itself has lent itself quite well to horror in the past. Some examples would be The Exorcism of Emily Rose, The Wrong Man, Jagged Edge, and The Devil's Advocate. The one that I picked out to watch was the 1936 drama starring Sylvia Sidney and Spencer Tracy, Fury. Not The Fury, not the Brian De Palma movie, but Fury. A movie that I first remember seeing in film school. It caught my eye the first time I saw it as something that seemed a bit ahead of its time. The narrative shifts several times throughout, as does the protagonist. Fury centers around a random man named Wilson traveling through the Deep South from Chicago who is pulled over out of nowhere by local deputies and immediately suspected of a kidnapping. The townsfolk are gossip-hounding, troublemaking rednecks who become furious on the first outbreak of news that the suspect might be in custody. They riot in the streets and break into the jailhouse to murder the suspected kidnapper, Wilson. Wilson, played by Spencer Tracy, is burned out of the jailhouse by the angry lynch mob and pronounced dead from the fire. We come to find out Wilson is still alive and that the sheriff has found him innocent of the crime with no real evidence to support otherwise. Wilson, now furious and playing dead, sets out to frame the mob for his brutal murder. This is where the movie really gets inventive in its storytelling. It's here, after the initial setup, which ends up being the entire first and second act of the film, where the narrative really shifts and goes into full courtroom drama. It's also here that you can see the strength in the editing as it helps the viewer to understand what we are watching when we are watching one story unfold, but two from separate perspectives. Those in the courtroom and Wilson eavesdropping in. I will admit the first time I was confused a bit when watching the third act play out because I don't think this type of storytelling was common at that point in time yet, so you can see the experimentation in the execution. Fury was made by the legendary noir director Fritz Lang. He who made my beloved Metropolis. It took home the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay that year. The film was cut by Oscar-nominated editor Frank Sullivan, who went on to edit films such as Joan of Arc and The Philadelphia Story. Sullivan edited 92 films and TV series from 1925 to 1960, where he cut his last TV series, The Westerner. Several moments of his editing in Fury caught my attention. His choice of shots during a confrontational dialogue between the suspected Wilson and the naive town sheriff really stands out. In this scene, Sullivan chose to change the beat several times to give the viewer the sense that this could go in either way of the two men's favor. The ignorance of the sheriff is portrayed beautifully by Sullivan with his variety of shots between the sheriff and Wilson. The scene changes duration of cuts as the intensity of the dialogue rises. In the scene, the two sheriffs look at each other as the first sign of evidence against Wilson arises. The cuts are quicker here and closer in on the actors' faces to get the effective reaction of the extreme close-up. The job that Sullivan does to show the viewer who is in control is done very effectively. Throughout the film, Sullivan showcases the theme of the film and the question that it asks, does being human always have to imply decent human behavior? Ooh. There is a political and social backdrop in this film that plays out in this scene. In beautiful montage fashion, there's also a scene that moves to the townfolk's spreading of gossip all over town about Wilson and a possible admission of guilt. Here, Sullivan shows how quickly the gossip escalates into a frenzy of exaggerations. Sullivan shows how quickly the gossip escalates. All right, said that. Sullivan also throws in a concept edit by using a quick shot of a chicken coop right smack in the middle of a montage of the townsfolk as a visual metaphor. The scene shows real concentration and organization by Sullivan. It shows that in the first half of the scene, the cuts are somewhat smooth and noticeable, whereas the second half, they stand out and are meant to be seen. This age-long contrast of unnoticeable editing versus showcased editing is evident in this entire film. There are a few scenes in this film that feel really poignant with the surrounding world around us today, Rob. As I mentioned, it's definitely ahead of its time, as was a lot of Fritz Lang's work. The townsfolk in this film are clear as a day the spitting image of the online mob culture of 2021. The way the courtroom scene plays out in the third act with Wilson listening in as his plan unfolds and he pulls one over on everyone who wronged him is a splitting image of social media trolling of today. Who knew something as old and obscure as Fritz Lang's Fury would feel so damn familiar as I sit here watching it this evening? Thanks for giving me a place to talk about this movie and the genre of courtroom dramas, Rob. A genre that really is a fun revisit if it's been a while. Be well, sir. Keep up the great show and rock on. Also, please check out our latest episode of The Chug Show on our channel that covers the entire Fast saga, where each person has the time it takes for another to chug an entire beer to explain the plot of a Fast and Furious movie. It's a fun ride, and I think you'll get a kick out of it at the very least. Well, let me drop this one into the live chat for all of you. It's the Chug Show. Chugging the... Oh, let's see. What goes better together than drinking and driving? You know what? You've already got me. You had me at hello. So thank you very much, Cinema. And thanks for writing this great letter in on Fury, which you should pick up because I do believe, if memory serves, that Fury is in fact on Blu-ray. I believe it is, to be honest. I do believe it is. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time now with this letter, but I am. Let's see. Who's next? Oh, you know what I have, ladies and gentlemen? I have another Willow Yang review. Willow Yang, ladies and gentlemen. As we all know, we know love. We know love. We just love Willow Yang. She's, or Willow, as she likes to say. Who would have thought our resident PhD in microbiology? I should make a rap song about that. We should write the Willow Yang rap song about Willow Yang. So there you go. I don't know how it would go. Once I wanted to be a rapper named Painfully White. I'm not kidding. That was 31 years ago. Then Vanilla Ice beat me to the punch. Maybe Macklemore. But hey, still I can dream. Willow Yang writes in about an Enterprise episode. She says, "Greetings, Rob. I am writing to give my thoughts on the Enterprise episode Twilight, which fortunately has nothing to do with sparkly vampires. To give a recap, the episode opens with Archer waking up in his quarters, confused about what is happening. He rushes over to the bridge just in time to see the Death Star that the Xindi had constructed firing upon Earth, blowing up the entire planet. Sometime later, Archer wakes up again to find himself now in a house and apparently much older. T'Pol is present and fills him in on what happened. Apparently, it has now been 12 years since Archer's expedition into the Expanse. Archer had, while saving T'Pol from one of the anomalies, gotten his brain infected by some parasites that caused him to suffer from anterograde amnesia. When Phlox is unable to find a way to eradicate the parasites, T'Pol takes over as captain and attempts to continue their mission of finding the Xindi weapon. The Enterprise gets damaged after an attack from some Xindi, however, delaying their search, and by the time they finally locate the Death Star, it's too late and Earth gets destroyed. The Xindi continue on destroying every human colony they could find, wiping out almost all of humanity. Phlox visits Archer, informing him that he has found a way to finally destroy the parasites in his brain, which was previously thought to be impossible short of vaporizing Archer in a subspace implosion. The treatment is initially successful, and Phlox makes the shocking discovery that destroying the parasites in the present will also apparently wipe them out in the past because, technobabble, such as it will be as if Archer had never been infected in the first place. Before Phlox could proceed with curing Archer, however, the Xindi ships arrive to wipe out the remaining human survivors. All the main characters get killed in the ensuing battle, and Archer creates a subspace implosion to kill himself and all of the parasites, thus resetting the timeline. Archer reawakens in sickbay, back in the moment after he'd gotten hit by the anomaly. The end. My primary criticism of Twilight is that the ending is just extremely predictable. From the moment the Xindi destroy Earth in the cold open, it's very clear to me that there will be time travel involved, and the events of the story aren't going to matter because it's going to conclude with everything being restored. Once Phlox had revealed that destroying the parasites in Archer's brain will reset the timeline, and that a subspace implosion can do the trick, there really isn't any need to watch the ending to know what's going to happen. Now, I do not think that can be entirely Enterprise's fault, since the show came out after the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, all of which have done similar stories like City on the Edge of Forever, Year of Hell, Yesterday's Enterprise, and Timeless, to name but just a few examples. Enterprise is entitled to at least a couple of alternate timeline episodes. Furthermore, I really like the added element of Archer suffering from anterograde, anterograde? Amnesia, a la Guy Pearce and Memento. I really enjoyed all the scenes of the other characters trying to deal with Archer's condition, having to constantly remind him of what has happened, similar to caring for someone who's suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. This brings me to T'Pol, who served as the co-lead of the story. I have personally found the character to be a little hit and miss in the series thus far. Her role in an episode like Bounty, for instance, where she spontaneously undergoes Pon farr and spends the entire duration writhing around in her underwear, was not a particularly good moment. Well, for you maybe, Willow. Am I right? However, I do actually quite like her in Twilight. I think that Jolene Blaylock was able to strike a good balance here between the character's Vulcan traits and the attachment and sense of loyalty that she had developed for the humans. I do wish that the episode could have been a bit subtler in its handling of the relationship between her and Archer. T'Pol telling Archer that our relationship has evolved over the years would have been the perfect way of leaving it up to the audience's interpretation as to what exactly has happened between the two. Boom, chicka, boom, boom. And I could have really done without Phlox's prying later on. Of course, one of the primary attractions of doing an alternate timeline story for me is seeing the writers being given the freedom to literally do whatever they want with the world and the characters without having to worry about the consequences, as everything will just be reset. Twilight does use that freedom to great advantage, opening with the destruction of Earth by the Xindi's Death Star. There are some fun space battles. Most memorably for me was the scene where T'Pol, quickly improvising, used the Xindi ship that was docked to the Enterprise to ram another Xindi ship. I also really love seeing the crew growing increasingly more desperate and disillusioned with their mission as things continuously go wrong for them, with Tucker at one point wanting to toss some Xindi prisoners they've taken out of an airlock and getting up in T'Pol's face over the decision she's made. Personally, while I've been mixed on the character, I'm not inclined to blame the Enterprise's failure to stop the Xindi on T'Pol. There's far too much uncertainty, too many things that are contingent on luck and chance events to really say whether any other route than the one Archer ultimately took would have worked. Plus, Archer cheated, considering they got help from a time traveler in Daniels. And of course, we get to witness the grisly deaths of all the main characters, including the entire bridge. Perhaps the writers nod to the debate about why starships are designed with the bridge being located in such an easily targetable area. All in all, I quite enjoyed Twilight. While the story is far from being original and the ending could have been seen from a light year away, it does rework some old material completely. I really like the added element of Archer suffering from amnesia, and I like the relationship between him and T'Pol. Twilight may not generate the same level of controversy and discussion like Dear Doctor, Cogenitor, or Similitude has. Similitude has. Similitude. Can I read today? Similitude has, but it serves its purpose as a fun, contained what-if story. A look at what's at stake and what may possibly be the outcome should the Enterprise's mission fail. Live long and prosper, Willow. Well, Willow, another great analysis. I mean, I'm going to be really sad when you stop doing an analysis of Star Trek. I beg you to go on and do Discovery. Please, 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 please. Oh, I live for that. But another great piece of cogent analysis on an Enterprise episode. What I really love about what you're doing here, Willow, is you're taking every episode and you're treating it with respect, even if the episode doesn't float your boat or turns out to be less than good. And I appreciate that. I think that's what every great critic should do. You know, it's not just, that sucked. I don't even know what that means. What do you mean that sucked? It didn't suck anything. It's a TV episode. How could it suck? You suck. So really, I appreciate that you take the time to write these very, very illuminating reviews. So thank you, Willow. Very awesome of you. Let's see. What more do I have to do? You know what? I think I'm just going to jump in and see what you guys are saying, because I have much work to do today. So let's go back and we'll see what's going on here. What's happening? We're going to go back to, and wouldn't you know it, the first person up is, in fact, Willow Yang. God love Willow Yang. Willow says, how do you find the character of Sylvie in Loki? One of the problems that I have with the Loki series right now is that I find Sylvie to be kind of bland, and I don't really buy into her relationship with Loki. I can understand that, but what I kind of do like about their relationship is how awkward it kind of is. I mean, you know, if you were confronted with a hot member of the opposite sex that was basically you, I mean, I think it would be hard not to be attracted to them, not because you're a narcissist, but because they would know you so well that you would share so many kind of traits, and you would know things about one another. You'd have instincts about one another that you wouldn't have with someone else. So I can understand that, but I like the show as a character study. But I like her. I mean, I have to see where she's going to go. I mean, I think her backstory is sad, but I can understand she hasn't exactly, she's been running around and has like these moments where she looks longingly at Loki or something, but she hasn't had as much character development as I might have liked to see. What are you going to do? Louis Terrazas sends in a tip and says, "Told you, Rob, fuck these corporatists. I will not build Pharaoh his fucking pyramid. As Gordon Gekko would say, we need visionaries, not execs. Plus, everyone on YouTube is so nervous to talk about the deadly influence of China on Hollywood right now. The #1 box office of the year is Hi Mom, made in China for $59 million and grossing $850 million. Y'all can say doesn't matter, but this infection is causing everything to devolve into something else. If it keeps going like this, nothing will be able to save it." I don't quite know exactly what you're referring to, but isn't Hi Mom, that's not the Brian De Palma Hi Mom. It would be, that was Brian De Palma, right? Or was that Scorsese? I think it was De Palma. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to here, but yes, China must be stopped, and what's happening in Hong Kong needs to also end. I mean, it's really too bad. I have made a new friend, and she is very learned when it comes to China. As a matter of fact, she's always sending out, tweeting really interesting things. She called herself a political dissident to me. Was it yesterday? But you should follow her if you can. Her name is Zephyr Chan on Twitter, and she knows a lot about China. And I think, Louis, you and her, she speaks your language. At least follow her to see her posts, because they're very, very interesting. And I feel she's very, very, very smart. And the stuff she's sharing it'll make your blood boil. Latino Slant, my man Paulie in the house. R&B, I love you, man. It's nuts what quality movies get the shaft or shelf and the garbage that gets distributed. Keep on keeping on. Paulie, you're not wrong about that. But, I do believe that quality wins out. I'm a romantic that way. I've always been a romantic. I believe that quality wins out, and I do think that cream rises to the top. But, yeah, I do think we need to see mo better movies. That's what I think. And hopefully we will. Mr. Intellectual sends in a tip and says, "Sir Rob, sadly, I feel like our generation will be standing on top of a dying hill, like in the classic Planet of the Apes, yet it will still be the same fate. Hollywood will be in shock at its demise as we all realize it was their own doing. Coup d'etat? Maybe, sir. Look, I would love to do that. That's what I'm here for. I'd love to continue to make movies. The conventional wisdom, I'll tell you right out. That's why I worked on something like Tango Shalom. Tango Shalom is a very uncool movie. There's not an edgy bone in its body. It's a throwback to a different era. I don't think most of the people that I know, imagination connoisseurs, are going to look at it and go, "Wow, it was the greatest movie ever." It's a trifle. It's a minor diversion, but I think its message is one that needs to be shared. And I like how it was done. I'm very happy for my contribution in it, but I have a project that I think I'm going to have a very much an uphill struggle to get made. But what it really comes down to is we need to change. Our real problem, I think, is that, especially in this country, is we believe that the only pursuit worth pursuing, really, from a business standpoint, is money. It's all it's about. And I think, unfortunately, it's unbalanced. We not only should be making money, but we should be improving the fabric of human existence at the same time. And I think companies should do both. And I know it's tall order because, well, Rob, there's no money in that. We have to look. We're going to make money as soon as we walk off the cliff. It'll be what were our corporate earnings last quarter, and we'll be like the Roadrunner falling to our deaths. We have to find a balance, and until we do, yes, Mr. Intellectual, I think we're deeply, deeply compromised. Sends in a diamond super chat sticker. Well, thank you, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow night with Andre from Midnight's Edge. Jeff Yerke, our friend Jeff Yerke, and Mrs. Y, the most romantic man on this channel. Hi, Rob. Random thoughts. As a fan who was there on day one of The Duelists, Alien, and Blade Runner, can I just say Thelma and Louise rocked my world. Talk about storytelling. Live long and prosper. The Yerk Man. P.S. J.P. Melville is still a god. Is that true? Was he a god in the first place? And I have to think, I would assume you were referring to Jean-Pierre Melville. One of my favorite directors. He directed Le Samurai, The Red Circle, which, thanks to Dieter Bastian, I have on 4K. Army of Shadows, thanks to Criterion. I own it in my collection. I mean, Bob the Gambler, Bob the Gambler, Bob Le Flambour. Big fan. He is a god. If you haven't watched any of Jean-Pierre Melville's movies, you need to watch them. Boy, do I love Le Samurai. So how are you feeling, Jeff? How's the back? Give your wife a kiss for me. Kevin sends in a super chat and says, "Hey, Rob, would you put Batman Begins in your list of best comic book origin movies, and why?" This is one of two. Let's see what Kevin goes on to say. If you were to direct a fourth film in the Nolanverse, what would you focus on in terms of the theme and or story, given that Blake Robin would be the protagonist? Ooh, those are good questions. First, I think Batman Begins is a very good comic book origin movie, but I'll tell you something about it. I like it. I kind of feel it's kind of one note. Even though we get to take an adventure and we go to the mountains of Asia and we meet the Hand or whatever and all that. It's not the Hand, that's Marvel. The League of Assassins, League of Shadows. I feel it's all kind of one note. I want it to be taken more on a roller coaster of a journey, but I think it's quite good. I really like how Bruce Wayne decides to become the Batman, and I like how they incorporate the real world into it. And Ra's al Ghul, I like all that stuff. I think it's all really, really good. And it probably is in the best comic book origin movies list, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the idea of John Blake, is it John Blake, taking over the mantle of Batman is inherently a great story. I love stories where a son has to live up to his father, and you'd actually play that story and the beats of responsibility. Like, I'll tell you something. If I made the story about essentially Robin taking over as Batman, what my thematic element would be, like in Godfather, I would go to Godfather 2. Michael Corleone is intellectual, he is diabolical, and he seeks to protect the family at all costs, and in doing so loses his own soul. And, I knew it was you, Fredo. He kills his own brother, which is a transgression you don't come back from. He damned himself for all eternity with that. Vito Corleone would never have made that mistake. And the great tragedy of Michael Corleone, and we see it juxtaposed in Godfather 2, is that Vito has a heart. Michael has a heart, but he became too calculating and too much. Maybe it was his military training, and he loses his own soul over the course of Godfather 2, where Vito always had his. And that's the great tragedy. I would just play that beat, that Christian Bale's Batman had a soul, and John Blake as Robin gets consumed. He gets consumed by Gotham. That's the story that I would tell, if somebody asked me. Bobby Hatch Kowal says, many parallels between the current states of the music biz and the movie biz. Democratization, accessible production tools, risk-averse formulaic mainstream product. Great indie work out there if you seek it out. P.S. Darktown Strutters is off Prime. I'm sorry to hear that. Put it back up there. You can put it back up there. How are things other than that, though? How's the construction going? I can't wait to hear and see. Richard sends in a tip and says, I really dislike Loki. Villains have a role to play. Loki aspires to power and has a complicated relationship with his family. What will be the synopsis for the new Thanos series? Over 6 episodes, Thanos learns to have a little perspective on things? Maybe, but I think that's kind of what they're going for. It's just a bit of a character study. I think I can understand why you're disliking it, because it's exactly with me too. It's not what I expected. And I'm going to wait until I see the ending to make up my own mind. But yeah, I love the first 2 episodes, and the last 3 have perplexed me more than anything else. I mean, they're beautifully made, but I wonder, where is all this going, and what am I supposed to glean from it? What am I supposed to take away from it? I'm not really sure, to be honest. But I'm still there. I'm still watching it. I'm still for it. Stubble McShave. Oh, there's this big news, man, and I can only imagine that Stubble McShave. I don't know what he does in his spare time, and that's it's up to him. But I can only imagine he would probably strip down to his skivvies and marched around his apartment, yelling, kind of the way I was yelling yesterday about the news of the Star Trek: The Motion Picture Director's Cut. Last night, I want you all to know, I went out in my backyard and I bayed at the moon naked. I was so excited. No, I really didn't do that, but I thought about it. I did, but I did Midnight Metal instead. So Stubble McShave says, I just learned that the showrunner of Wheel of Time will have a presentation at Comic-Con at Home. I also saw that Comic-Con will coincide with the opening and first couple of days of the Olympics. Do you think there will be a lot of overlap of the audience? No. Although, you know what? I think there's probably more Comic-Con audience that will admit to watching the Olympics. I think everyone likes the Olympics. They do. I think that, who doesn't? It's fun. Even the non-sports fans, you can get into the Olympics because you don't need to know the history. You just watch competitors compete. Simon Gilmore is here. He says, yes, Star Trek The Motion Picture Blu-ray 4K coming, nerds rejoice. Now, wait a minute, Simon. It's not just the 4K of Star Trek The Motion Picture. It's the director's edition of Star Trek The Motion Picture. Woohoo! Yeah. Derek the Derelict became a member of this channel. Well, Derek the Derelict, let me tell you, we're going to have one of our bi-weekly member chats. If you entered at the certain level, you can always up your pledge. I don't know how that works, to be honest. But you can. And join us on Saturday at noon. We're going to have another Zoom chat. Emmanuel Martinez Buisson has subscribed to the channel. Thank you, Emmanuel. John Argot Rodriguez sends in a super chat. Thank you. I imagine that was a super chat badge. Was that a super chat badge? Thank you, John. I appreciate that. 200 Watt Studio says, Rob Fritz Lang, The Fury is only on DVD from Warner Archive. Just Fury. That's a bummer. The Fury is the Brian De Palma movie. I knew it was out from Warner Archive, but I thought it was on Blu-ray. What a bummer. Mukbang Reviews. Mukbang Reviews. Where have you been? Here late. But the movie business is very much intact here. Lots of roads are blocked for filming, like always. Furthermore, actors and performers on Broadway have begun filming while unable to work. Yes, Mukbang, good to see you, man. Hope all is well with you. 200 Watt Studio says that Twilight on Enterprise is still a better love story than Twilight. Oh, come on now. I think the first Twilight's actually pretty good. I like it. Mukbang says, thanks for continuing to broadcast. Well, thank you very much. We know you're busy. We love your shows. Harder question, if you had to eliminate a show, which would it be? You mean one of my shows or just shows in general? If I had to eliminate one of my shows? No, I want to make more shows. Probably The Midnighter because I'm tired. I mean, I started it as an experiment. I did Midnighter 24 yesterday. I'm like, wow. But you know what? I had a really fun time. The last couple of Midnighters, the last two, the Richard Donner Midnighter and last night's Midnighter, I quite enjoyed. I had fun. I had a lot of fun. Kevin, the comic doctor, says, hey, Rob, I caught your midnight show earlier today. You guys discussed Alpha Flight last night. Do you think the property will get an adaptation? Like you, I love the early issues and early X-Men stories. Be well, Rob. Kevin, the comic doctor, he's got a YouTube channel. What's in the Press, I think is the name of his comic. He is a comic doctor. He's amazing, and I've got big boxes to send him because I want to get some books slabbed, just like my Alpha Flight #1. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Alpha Flight gets introduced or gets made because I love that team. I love Alpha Flight, and I would go back to the Byrne stories. And also the idea that, that Vindicator dies and the mantle gets taken over by his wife. I love that. I love that. Mukbang Reviews sends in another super chat and says, about the MCU TV shows on Disney+, it bothers me that so many are concerned about who is beyond the curtain or pulling the strings. I enjoy the journey and don't care. Is storytelling changing? You know what, Mukbang? I think you just nailed something that is problematic in our fan circles. Everybody is waiting for these reveals. And it is the journey, not the destination. And that's true in life, too, because the destination always ends the same for all of us. It's got to be the journey. And if you're not paying attention to the journey, what are you waiting for? You're waiting to get like one revelation. Oh, there's a revelation. And I think people are missing out on the journey. Some people think the journey is not worth taking. And I understand that. That's a very valid point of view, I suppose. But I think you're absolutely right about that. It does bother me that so many are concerned about who is beyond the curtain or pulling the strings. I think it is, in fact, the journey. I agree with you. Kevin asks if I was excited for Star Wars Visions. Okay, can we talk about this? I haven't talked about this on the show. When we were doing the Star Trek, the Next Generation box set, I had this idea that, because they were talking about releasing Star Trek the Animated Series on Blu-ray, and I even brought this up. I said, wouldn't it be cool if you put Star Trek the Animated Series out on Blu-ray? It's fine. But what if you took the audio tracks with the original cast and all that, and you gave the audio tracks to different animation companies around the world? There were 22 episodes, so find 22 animation companies around the world and tell them to go crazy. You know, give them parameters. Like, we have to be able to recognize the iconography of the characters and the ship and all that, but you do what you want. Well, for those of you who don't know, there's a Star Wars Visions series coming out on Disney+. And it is being done, they basically gave it to a bunch of, I believe it's just all Japanese animation companies. I can't tell you how excited I am for this. What a great idea. And I'm not trying to take credit for having the idea. Nobody did that Star Trek idea, but I think it was still a great idea. I cannot wait to see it. To say I'm deliriously excited. I watched the trailer. There's a great making of piece on YouTube. Go check it out. It's so exciting. Again, like I tell you, don't we live in interesting times where there's so much cool shit going on? There's a lot of cool shit going on, and I, for one, am very excited for it. And maybe you should be too. All right, folks, gentle beings, kind souls across the 28 known galaxies, however you identify. I'm going to bring an end to Robservations episode number 718. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Simon Gilmore. I want to thank Justin Toner. I want to thank Louise X. Sparrow. I just looking at that. I love seeing her name written out. It's so cool. Justin Toner. Bunyan Snipe. Man, we got a lot of blue wrenches into house. I want to thank you for all you do. I want to thank everybody for supporting this channel through tips and super chats, and I especially want to thank people who take the time to write letters. Not that you're better than anyone else, but, you know, the people that support this channel through tips and super chats are great, and I thank them for it every day. But, man, letter writers, every time I get a letter from somebody, I feel honored that somebody even wrote me. And when you can share, like, Catherine's mural, or you can share your work, your own YouTube channels, whatever, I'm here for that. You want to make something? I'll promote it. You know, within reason. You know, I have to like it, because I'll kiss your ass, but only if I like what you're making. So, anyway, so make good things. And look, I'm not the final arbiter either. If I don't like something, that doesn't mean anything. I still will promote it. I'm not going to be like, well, this isn't good. If you make something cool, hey, I'll promote it. And on that note, I want to remind everybody, I think I'm doing a Midnight Metal tonight. I think, but I have a lot of things I have to get delivered still. So we'll see. But the job, Midnight Metal, happening probably. Also, tomorrow night on, can you believe it, Midnight Madness with my Friday co-host. And, of course, Andre, hopefully, from Midnight's Edge. I'm sure we're going to have a doozy of a conversation. And other than that, you know, I'm on the John Campea show tomorrow. Again, I think. I would just assume so, but you never know. And on that note, I'm going to end and say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, as I am sweating, have a better day.